Martin, thanks so much for joining us today on PivotMe.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you. Well, thank you for inviting me on, April.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, Martin, I'm going to do a quick introduction, but we're excited to get into both what you speak about on your Calming Anxiety podcast, and also know some about your backstory, how you got into the work that you're doing, and the work that you do with clients, with your audience. Excuse me. But first, let's do an introduction. So, Martin Hewlett, clinical hypnotherapist and host of the Calming Anxiety podcast. He's joining us today to talk about the things he's working with working through with his millions of listeners. We know that anxiety is definitely, my guess is at an all-time high, definitely not my specialty, but luckily it's yours. And so I think that the information that you're providing, the teaching that you're providing, the information you're putting out there is just so critical at a time like this. So welcome to the podcast. Welcome to PivotMe. And Martin, I'd love for you to just tell us a little bit about your backstory, maybe even what got you into this type of work.
A lifetime. Primarily, I became a clinical hypnotherapist a few years ago after a huge mental breakdown. Classic story. And I have struggled throughout my life. People who know me before the event would say that I'm a totally different person now. I was a very reactionary, fiery individual, one could say.
Yeah.
And then work were very supportive, gave me some incredible therapy called Rewind. And in an instant, it really was that sort of moment, switching on a light bulb. I changed. My childhood issues, which have always been problematic, were no more. In fact, as I walked out from that first session, of which I was aware that, and thinking to myself, well, part of me was thinking, this is rubbish. I just stopped in the middle of a car park and thought, whoa, that persistent voice in my head saying I was a failure and I was useless had gone. And it set me free. And more than that, I thought, I need to learn how to do this. So I went off and I qualified as a hypnotherapist and then did more studies. And subsequently, I've then put hypnotherapy, meditation, mindfulness, and my lifelong background as a martial arts instructor all into calming anxiety, and started the podcast 13, 14 months ago. And it has just exploded. It's bigger than anything I could have done. I only started it to provide a little bit of extra help for local hypnotherapy clients. But within a year, it broke the 1 million download barrier, and it's the graph is just going up all the time. I know no one should be grateful, that would be wrong, or try to capitalize on the pandemic, but my podcast came along just at the right time. So,
sure.
Yeah.
It's definitely not capitalizing. You're providing an invaluable service in a time where globally we need your message.
Yes, and global is the thing. I was amazed when I look at the statistics. The show is now charting in 86 countries.
Wow.
And then I look at the demographic, and in a way, it's quite sad, because the main demographic that listening on the show are 20 to 34-year-old women. And the emails I get as well of thanks. So I'm not going to be stopping anytime soon, because people need what I provide. So,
yeah. One thing I want to highlight, Martin, what you said was so important, so many things in there, but one is that, in this show, Pivot Me, we talk about the pivots. We talk about these moments in our lives or business where sort of everything changed, and you immediately highlighted a pivot. But what's so important is that Martin used to be different. And then through this experience, he completely changed. And it's such a good reminder because, I am a listener of your podcast and I listen to your message. and you feel like the kind of guy who's always lived this way. Like this guy's always been on a meditation pillow. He's balanced, he's peaceful. And so to know that, oh, I used to be very reactionary. Oh, I used to have a very different story about my life. I think that's one of the most important pieces of that, because some people are looking and going, oh, well, he must have always been this way. And I love when we experience something or we change our story, our whole life has shifted.
Yeah. I could quantify it that if I was a religious person, I've been born again. That I really, it is a huge shift. And everyone, work colleagues mainly, but old friends who knew the previous version of me to how I am now, I am infinitely different. I am annoyingly different in my generalized calmness towards everything. And I know other people can do it because I have been rock bottom. I've been down there. I've had an eclectic mental health background, and it never goes, and I say that to clients and friends. Don't think we're going to change you. Your background will never go, but you will be so much more at peace with what has happened in your past. And you'll use it almost as a badge of honor, not as a way of eliciting an emotional response and sympathy. It's not for that. It's to say, yeah, I've been through that, but it's made me a much better person. And that's what I do with clients when I do one-on-one hypnotherapy. Don't let your past define you, but use it as an instrument of strength and growth. And like I've pivoted twice. Once was that amazing moment when I walked out from my first session. And then when I listened to Pat Flynn, who's a YouTuber, and it was his suggestion. I was just listening. I was thinking, well, I'll do a YouTube channel and I'll build that up. But when I found him and he said podcasting, I just, it's that light bulb moment. That would be me. And now the podcast is defining my brand, and it's, I didn't see this 2 years ago at all, or even this time last year.
What a significant change that you never saw yourself as being a podcaster. Did you do public speaking or anything where you spoke to a large audience? I know your background is also as a paramedic for years. I mean, have you ever done anything like this?
Well, I have. I worked on local radio when I was at college, and then a friend of mine and myself, we helped set up a shopping center radio station. So I've done that, but not in a professional sense.
Sure.
But being a martial arts instructor, you get used to speaking to people, and then being a paramedic, that just gives you an incredible life skill of dealing with every situation that life will throw at you. But I've never done the speaking that the podcast entails. And then when the messages and the emails come in and you realize the responsibility, you then start thinking, I better do this very carefully and professionally. And when I do record them, I'm recording them mainly for me, for the younger version of myself. So I'm doing it from a place of compassion and empathy. And I think that comes across when you hear other apps. They're recorded by professional speakers, but I actually record them in one take, close my eyes, and talk to the 4-year-old me. That's who they're for.
That's powerful, because part of building a brand and a podcast is sort of identifying your avatar. You and I spoke offline about this last week. But it's so important to have a clear picture of who you're speaking to. And that was amazing to hear you're speaking to a younger version of Martin.
Oh, yeah. And that's really crucial for anyone going through problems where they think it started when they were younger. You've got to meet your younger self. Tell them it's okay, right? It's not your fault. Go and rest. I forgive you. Give them a hug and then move on. And that's actually a very crucial cornerstone in hypnotherapy and mindfulness. So
sure. Sure. Can you talk about, I want to eventually get into some of the things that you do, tips for mindfulness, for calming anxiety, but I would love to know, I think of this sort of previous version of Martin that was more reactionary. I'm sure, anger and all sorts of things that were going into it. How different is your life? You say you're annoyingly different. In what way are you experiencing life different now because of the work that you've done?
Apart from the odd occasion, because no one's perfect, I'm just calmer. If I see people getting angry, like in shops, in queues, I will actually approach them and go, you don't need to be like this. I drive a lot calmer. In fact, I've had to change
Drive. Yeah.
because I put the calming anxiety logo on the back of the car, so I can't go around cutting people up now.
You can't be the angry driver, right?
No, but I have 2 cars. So I have the calming anxiety car, and then I have the matte black 30-year-old sports car.
Okay. So if you're in a rush to be somewhere, you don't use the calming anxiety car, is what I'm hearing. Okay.
No. But I live my life that I don't have to rush anywhere.
Yeah.
And even when I was out on the road as a paramedic, it's just, if you rush, you'll make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
If you just take a deep breath and go, I'm going to do the best I can do, there is no need for stress. There's no need for anger. Don't get upset about the things outside of your scope that you cannot change. Like we cannot change the pandemic. What we can do is change the way we react to it.
Sure.
Right? And yes, it's stressful. And, I'm in a stressful situation. In the next 8 weeks, I have to move house. The people who own this house are selling it, and we have to move out. There's no houses in the market at the moment. But, I could get wound up, but it won't benefit me, and it won't benefit the family I have. So.
Sure. We can't change the occasion, but we certainly can change our response to the occasion. So
Absolutely.
What are some of the things that you, either through your podcast or directly to clients, what are some of the things that you tell them to do to manage anxiety? I'd probably frame it specifically in the light of what's going on. So obviously some people's businesses and jobs have been dramatically changed. I know you guys are going through a lockdown again as well. Some people have kids at home that are doing distance learning. There's a lot of change. And so I guess I would love for you to speak to both anxiety and perhaps navigating the change, how best to navigate it.
Well, I appreciate that because I'm homeschooling the kids at the moment, whilst working for the ambulance service, 12-hour shifts at home. And just to explain that, I have to monitor newly qualified paramedics. The computer we use for data protection has to be refreshed every 2 minutes. So there's no not paying attention to it whilst homeschooling. And after 4 days of that this morning I woke up, I had a blinding headache. I was really stressed. I was tired. And I made the decision. I phoned the school up and said, we're not doing it today. I need to stop. And I took the kids out for a walk in the woods with the dog, and we got muddy. You have to realize when you're getting to that point, no, put yourself first, put your own feelings and thoughts first, and look after yourself, because you cannot look after your family if you're at breaking point, right? Now, it is really difficult if your job's going down, there's no income because you're self-employed. That is horrible, but you still need to take time out. You really do. You need to look after this part more than anything else, because if that fractures, then you're no good to anyone. You can't support the family. In the UK and in the Western Hemisphere, although you might lose your possessions, you'll always have a roof over your head. It might not be the lifestyle you want. And so being mindful in the morning when you wake up and just lying there for 5 minutes, just collect your thoughts, focus on your breathing. And there's not just my show, there are thousands of podcasts out there, and there's lots of apps, which I don't want to mention because I'm about to take them on head to head.
Martin's got a new upcoming surprise around the corner.
Yeah, we have, and it's unique, but you really do need to take time out. You need to learn how to meditate. And if you don't know about meditation, it's just relaxed breathing and stopping and being mindful of how your body feels right now.
Mhm.
And yes, you can listen to my app or you can download my ebook. They're all free. But there is no excuse not to do it. You can't
Mhm.
say you don't have time, right? Everyone can give it 5 minutes. I mean, there's Hal Elrod with his miracle morning. If you want to get up early, which I don't want to do, I tried it. It's not for me. I'll get up at my own time, but I will set the alarm, and for 5 minutes, I will just lie there
Mhm.
and just breathe. And when I go to bed at night, I do a breathing exercise,
Mhm.
and it just gives you that time for you to reset all those anxious thoughts, right? Control what's going on in your house. And it is difficult for everyone, okay?
Mhm.
But in a first world country, we have social care, and it may not give you enough right now.
Mhm.
Financially, you might be really stressed, but just take care of your own mind and see
Sure.
it in a different light. Cuddle your kids, no matter how obnoxious they're being. They can't help it, but we can as adults. We can correct our response to difficult situations.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
Do you practice mindfulness with the kids? I know that they're, whether
Yeah.
that's meditation or even just talking them through a breathing exercise or a way to, when they're young, we have a 7 and 9-year-old, and regulating our emotions can be a challenge. And so I'm curious if you recommend, hey, take a deep breath or take a walk. What
No,
advice you give to kiddos?
my stepkids are 7 and 9, and they were, especially Henry, who's 9, he was challenging, but beautiful, but challenging.
Yes,
And in the last
I
year,
totally know what you mean, Martin.
yeah, he has changed so much. He understands it. He gets upset, that he gets frustrated and loses his temper, but he's aware it's happening. And that's so crucial. When you're aware that you're letting yourself down, he's not letting me down. He lets himself down and he corrects it. And that's
Mm.
beautiful to see, that connection between a wasted emotion, but, and there again, when I get it wrong, I'll always turn around, because he'll point it out. I'll point it out. I go, no, I made a mistake. I need to stop. I need to take a deep breath. And that they are part of the podcast. They see me record it. And I'm teaching him online business and entrepreneurship, because he's got that explosive mind that likes to fire out in all directions,
Mhm.
whereas regular academia is not his thing. Whereas
Mhm.
7-year-old Emily is just a swat, and we both hate her because she's clever. Her mathematical abilities and her sporting prowess is annoying. She can do 20 chin-ups. 20. She's 7. It's just insane.
We
But
have
yes,
one of those as well.
they're learning mindfulness.
Yeah. Absolutely. It makes a huge difference. One thing I want to point out in what you said, Martin, is you also said, I'm not perfect. I make the mistakes and I own it in front of my kids. And I want to highlight that, because I think we do the same. And that is such a critical thing to do with your kids, because I think there was a time when people felt like as parents, we needed to be on a pedestal, and that is not relatable. And when we share in that kind of moment of vulnerability and that moment of mistakes, that's what makes us relatable. It's important to let your kids see you screw up and then how you manage it going forward. I lost my temper. I said something I shouldn't have said. I should have managed this. I should have managed traffic or disappointment better. I think that's such an important thing, that you own that, and then they get to see you fix it.
Yeah. When I brought up my first two, because I was a house husband for 9 years with my eldest boys, Jake and Tom, they're 26 and 28. I always wanted to bring them up as young adults and let them debate with me. And I always remember Jake got to 5 and I said, well, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And he came back with a counter argument that absolutely nailed me. And I go, actually, you're right. So we'll do your way.
Yeah.
And they grew up learning the value of debate and respect.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get it right back then, and I had a lot of trouble, but that was my past interfering with me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm downright going to make sure I get it absolutely spot on with these two. And it's I don't know, the privilege of being a step parent as well, and being really broody. I get to do it all again. I get 2 lives. I'm
Yeah.
just so lucky with that. So,
Sure.
yeah.
Sure. I think it offers us that moment of reflection, and I see that in both step parents situation. I've also seen that in grandparent situation, where the way that they are as a grandparent is in stark contrast. And I don't mean just sweets, but I mean it's in stark contrast in how they were as a parent. And I think they've got the benefit of experience. They also got the benefit of reflection.
Yeah.
And if only we could all have that. And I think that we can, even people that are going through the first time around, we can have that benefit of experience and reflection just by creating it, just by thinking about how did I navigate that situation? How could I have done it better? What did I model for my kids? We don't have to wait. We get the benefit of doing it right and being more intentional. I'm a big fan of being an intentional parent. But that takes reflection. You've got to build that in. You got to go, I didn't navigate that well. I'm going to do that differently, and explain it to your kids in the process too.
Yeah. I mean, I think when a parent apologizes to their child, that is really powerful. It's very powerful for the child to see that adults, especially the most important adults in their life, can make a mistake and then say sorry. It helps your child grow.
So can you speak on that a little bit more? Because I think there's definitely parents, or kind of on a different tangent of parenting, but this is so important. Many parents are, I believe, they're concerned that they will diminish their authority by apologizing, by acknowledging that they don't have the answers or that they made a mistake. Can you speak to why that is so important?
I think that's just personal pride. Some people just never like to say sorry, ever.
Yeah.
We all have work colleagues, and you can see them do something and you go, "Why, I didn't do that." And you're just like, "But I saw you." And I think that's part of their child response that's really embedded deep in their psyche. But that's something I think hypnotherapists are very aware of. How we react is all born from how we were as a child, because part of us never grows up. It is important to show your children that you're human. And if we want them to apologize for their mistakes, a child knows if we've made a mistake. They're not stupid. And if we lie to them, then all we're teaching them is that lying's acceptable. That's what adults do. And we shouldn't. If we want to bring our children up to be the best versions of themselves, we have to be honest. And we're not perfect. Just because we're a parent doesn't give us some God power. And I turn around to my lot and say, I do have an issue. I do get it wrong at times, quite a lot of times, but I'm always trying to improve. Always do. And there are some things I don't wish to change. My other half says, well, if you want to be perfect, you could change this. Okay, but I've come a long way. Yes, I want to be calm in most situations, but I'm still me. We shouldn't strive for perfection. My core value is I never want to knowingly and on purpose upset or hurt another person.
Wow.
I would never want to put someone down, belittle them, or make myself feel superior to someone. That's just not. And I'd like my kids to do that as well.
I would imagine that core value, can I guess, is a contrast to how you used to conduct your life?
Yeah, I wouldn't. I'd never want to have been a bully. I may have been unwittingly. And I'm probably sure a lot. I mean, yes, I've got some colleagues who put in complaints that I was bullying, but it wasn't intentionally. It wasn't from a sociopathic, narcissistic point of view, whereas we all know people who are, and they know they are. But yes, I've changed, and I deeply regret the people that I've upset in the past through my inability to understand how I interacted.
Wow. Yeah.
A lot of learning's gone on over the last few years.
I bet. One of the things that we discuss in this, in PivotMe, we talk a lot about communication. So usually most of our listeners are business owners. So we talk a lot about how we communicate with our team, our employees, and our family, and the most important relationships we have in life. But that it's not so much about what you say, it's what the listener hears. Yeah. And that's hard because it puts the onus back on us. But I'm a big believer in radical responsibility over how we show up in this world. So
You've cut out, but if it's still recording, you've frozen on the screen. Which is a shame. So if anyone is still listening to my part, or maybe April's part, oops.
come on. And we're back.
And we're back.
Okay. Stringer's back on. It was the Wi-Fi. I don't know. It's 5G and Bill Gates. Okay, we're back. One thing I want to mention, Martin, that I think is so valuable. You're talking about how essentially we parent the way that we were parented. And that's by default. And it takes a very, very intentional change to not parent the way that we were parented, which is funny because even people that are doing it, if you say, well, did you like the way you were parented? Oftentimes the answer is no, and yet we're still replicating it. So can you talk about how to not parent the same way we were parenting, whether that's a practice, a book? Talk to us about that.
That was a key point in me wanting to be a parent. I wanted to break the cycle. So I had an older brother and we had a very difficult father. We had a very difficult upbringing. I was fortunate. I was put into secure psychiatric care at 14 and a half. And that helped really, I mean, massively. And I have a massive debt of gratitude to the psychiatrist that identified it and put me in there. And then the psychiatric nurses that helped me survive. So when I had children, I wanted to give them something I didn't have. And I'm sure my ex-wife would sort of like go, not all the time there, Mark, but I made a conscious effort to break that cycle. My brother didn't, and he went through life with the same baggage that he'd had. And also I had a colleague that had a similar upbringing to me, and they've moaned about it all their life. And it defines how angry they are. I mean, colleagues call him Mr. Angry. And he still perpetuates the abuse he suffered, and he doesn't see it. Even though I've put it out to him. I said, look, you're just like your dad. Explodes. It takes, and I'm not bigging myself up, but it just takes a massive amount of strength to try and break that. But I wanted to, and I tried my best with my first family, and I'm damn well doing a better job this time. No disrespect to Jake and Tom. But, you know, it is difficult. You know, if you've had a bad upbringing, that is what you do. You know, that is the framework. You know, people say, well, that's how we react, isn't it? I always remember this colleague, something happened at work, and he opened the back of the ambulance and he just said, well, I shout at you, you shout at me, and then we hug. He goes, me and my wife are always shouting. And I was like, no, I don't shout. That's not how grown-ups do it. And he couldn't make that connection, that's how his dad had treated him, and that's how he treats absolutely everyone. I think you've got, especially for a male, you have to really swallow a massive dollop of humble pie and say, this is wrong, I was wrong, I want to improve. And it's difficult, you know, because we are human. And part of us never grows up. There is always that 4, 6, 10-year-old trying to do for us what they think is best and not realizing it's keeping us back, it's withholding us, it's damaging us. And through hypnosis, we talk to that young person and we say, look, can you change because it's not helping now? And the short answer is yes. And the client moves forward.
Wow, that's powerful. So there's first got to be an awareness that it's happening. And what I hear is also owning it. Hey, I'm doing this and I need to do better. I think that's probably, just speculating, that's probably one of the biggest jumps right there, is just the awareness that it's happening, because it can just be, hey, this is just how I communicate this. As you were talking about this, I'm thinking about some colleagues that I've worked with that were yellers, and they're like, this is just how we communicate. I'm like, that's not how I communicate. If I'm yelling, I'm terribly wrong, because that's just, I communicate for a living, always have been. And that's never the way. I would always say, nobody can hear your message because of your delivery.
Yes,
You can be saying the most profound thing, but if it's at that level, either, some people are rallying to fight you, and then the other people are scared of you. They can't hear your message.
If someone raises their voice to me at work or a patient or any time, I switch off. I think, don't want to know.
Yeah.
Because they're not listening.
Sure.
If no one gets their point across with anger and aggression. No one does. We learn through debate, through listening. That's just crucial. And subsequently, if you shout at your kids, which we all do because we're human, they're not going to learn, are they? You should only shout to protect them if they're in danger. It's just, how will a child who will shut down emotionally inside their head if you're shouting because they're scared and upset because they've annoyed the most important person in their world, how are they going to learn? They're not. So
I think that's a really important message, is never shout at your kid. And it's tough because I think people do that and they believe they're getting the desired response. Like, oh, well, they're not going to do this again because I made a really big impression on them. But I think all you've done is made your child fearful of you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah.
One thing I would love to understand is how, so you said, pretty traumatic childhood. You broke away from your story, which is amazing. And actually kind of at the center of my work and my brand is change your story, change your life.
Yeah.
And you and I haven't talked about this much, but that's something that I firmly believed in, because I very much stepped away from my story, and I've helped so many clients do it where, well, I'm not the kind of person that does this. I silenced everything apparently except for our landline. We're just going to have to suffer through that because it's too far away to get. But the power is in changing your story. And it's not about the event, because two people can experience the exact same event, have different stories about it. One is empowered by it. One is will use it as a crutch for the rest of their life. Not to say that these things aren't traumatic, but they're not reasons to never thrive. But how does your experience when you were younger and going through the psychiatric institute, how does that experience help you today, both through the podcast or the work that you do with clients? Is it just because, hey, I've been through this too? I imagine you've got a unique perspective.
Well, that definitely helps, and especially, say, as a paramedic, whenever there's a mental health job, my crewmates go, "You'll go," and I will go into some clients and I'll say, right, what's the issue? And they'll turn around and say, I've got borderline personality disorder, and I just turn around and go, you're not even trying. Borderline, that's rubbish. I've got this full-blown dissociative personality disorder. And at that point, you just bond, because they go, actually, this person's talking to me as a human being. They're not annoyed. There's two answers. One, yes, my background helps me with people, clients and the listeners, because they know I've experienced it. I haven't just done some exam, or I'm not just a podcaster who wants to grow in this space.
Sure.
But it's intrinsically who I am. Ever since I was sentient, I've wanted to reach out and help. I never realized, I became aware of it about 10 years ago, that I'm just driven to care. That's why I've ended up as a medic, and now as a hypnotherapist, and now as a podcaster. I couldn't be a fighter or an airline pilot as much as I wanted to be a pilot. I can't deny how I'm wired, which is to look after others. And I know people go, that's really wishy-washy, but it's an undeniable fact. It's what I do well. So everything's culminated in me having this podcast and finding something that I can do, which I really enjoy and which serves. And I want nothing else than that, apart from world domination and be the #1 podcast.
Just those things. Yeah.
Things, yeah.
Absolutely. I might be able to help you with those. So we have books in our team, and they're called World Domination. They actually have that printed on the front. So funny that you would say that. One thing, excuse me, I would love for you to speak to is, so a lot of our listeners are high performance. I mean, you and I talked about this a little bit offline, but I said we're the pretty driven type, and sometimes that is hard to switch off. You know, you're at work, you're running your business, you're hard charging, and because of that, sometimes we're not as open about struggles, whether that's anxiety or depression or just feelings of overwhelm, because, hey, I'm the leader, I am the person with plan, and there's really no space for me to kind of pause or have a moment of weakness. Can you speak to someone who is a high performer that maybe is experiencing overwhelm or anxiety today?
They just need to take time out, just even if it's 5 minutes, but 10 minutes a day, just to be aware of the moment, right? Your brain needs that, because when you're asleep, your subconscious is working through all the memories of the previous day and putting everything in order and letting the brain rest and relax. And then when they wake up, they're on go for those 12 hours or more. And, you know, I've been there when I've done far too many hours in a day. If you don't take time, you will be stressed, right? And I was, about 4 years ago, the doctors wanted to put me on blood pressure tablets. My blood pressure had crept over the 140 barrier. And this is when I started to get really into mindfulness. And I declined it because I know that's a lifestyle problem, as is type 2 diabetes, which I stopped as well. And I just chose at that point to be more relaxed. And people go, oh, you can't just choose to be more relaxed. You can. I do my blood pressure at the beginning of a shift in the ambulance. And I was happy once I got it down to 120, but I knew I could do more because I am so competitive in everything. It got worrying for my colleagues when my blood pressure was like 82/50 and my heart rate was 34. And they're like, I think you need to go to hospital. Well, we'll be going there later anyway. Wow. You can change your world just by thinking about it. You can change your stress levels just by having 10 minutes of letting go. And for those who haven't tried it, give it a week. Just give yourself a week. Say, okay, let's see really if this works. Because it's not just me it's worked for. Someone who is bizarrely over the top OTT, always the center of attention, hyper, manic, and then massively depressed. It works for millions of people. You know, I didn't come up with it. Mindfulness has been around, certainly in the East where they do meditation. It works. It's not some new age. It's not airy fairy. It's just something we've forgotten to do, which is take care of ourselves in the moment, just to learn to breathe, just to go, yeah, right. That's cool. You know, and I've seen it from people who don't even know mindfulness and meditation. My favorite moment in my entire career is meeting a woman who I had known. I'd saved her life 3 times from heroin overdoses. So she was flat, she was blue. We bag her, pump air into her. We give her Narcan, reverse it. She gets up, tells us we're all idiots and other things, and then runs away. And then a couple of years later, I'm on a separate job to an elderly person. And there's this carer there, and I'm kind of trying to think, because I'm hopeless with names and memories. And I say, do I know you? She goes, probably saved my life a few times. I was a heroin addict. I go, that's it. And she wasn't just a heroin addict. She was an alcoholic as well. So she had the worst addictions. I said, well, how did you get over it? And she goes, I just woke up one day and said, enough. I went, pardon? She goes, yeah, I just said enough. I stopped. She went cold turkey off drink and heroin. And not and she still lives in the same community. So she's still surrounded by the society and her social circle that still do drugs. And I just thought, if she can do it, anyone can do it. I'm desperate to find her. I want to interview her.
Yeah.
I want to empower her as a poster of what you can do if you choose to. If you're ready to let go, you can choose to do it.
It's amazing. I mean, again, that's at the center of change your story and change your life. So her circumstances didn't change at all. And whatever drove her to be a heroin addict and an alcoholic, there's probably quite a bit of trauma in there to put her in that place. Though that situation still existed. That childhood or experiences, whatever it is that led her to that dark place in her life, still existed. All she did is change the story about them. Like, I'm not suffering because of this. Now I'm going to be strong because of this, because of the struggles that I've navigated have made my muscles stronger. It's given me grit.
Yeah. I see too many people who use it as an excuse for non-achievement. They go, I can't be too specific, but one girl once turned around and go, "Oh, you don't know what it's like. My nan died 7 years ago." And I really did rip into her and said, "You have no idea. My dad died 3 weeks ago. I've never used it as an emotional crux." And I really made her look at what she was trying to achieve and get out of this sympathy, which was unfounded for where she was. And she changed. We walked out and my crewmate said, "Mart, you never told me about your dad dying 3 weeks ago." I said, "We didn't." But she didn't know that. And she needed to have a wake-up call. It's just like, oh, wow, you're a good actor. And sometimes people need to be told. We do need to be blunt. You go, look, you're using that for the wrong reason. Okay. If you want a better life, you're going to need to put in something called hard work. You're going to have to face reality. You're going to have to admit your failings and your mistakes and then move forward. And it is hard. It's very hard.
Sure.
And I feel sorry for people who can't overcome it, which is why people like you and me are there to try and help with our experience.
For sure. For sure. One thing I want to ask about earlier, you said that you tried getting up early. You referenced The Miracle Morning. We love that book. In fact, we just had one of the co-authors for The Miracle Morning for Entrepreneurs on a few weeks back. Huge fan of morning routines. I hear that getting up early is not your cup of tea. But tell me, do you have a morning routine in general? So it's not early, but when Martin does get up, do you have kind of a set of habits that you follow through to set yourself up for success?
Absolutely. Because I work shifts and have done for 20 years, I can't have a morning routine. But something I've always learned, because when I was 13, I had a paper round. And because I was so committed, even at that age, I had 6 paper rounds. So I'd get up at 3:30 to go and knock them out before school. As soon as the alarm goes on, I'm not a snooze person. As soon as that goes off, I'm up straight away and will commit to what I have to do. I watched Hal's Miracle Morning premiere film and I started to do it, but I realized that doesn't suit me.
Yeah.
So tomorrow I have to be on shift for the ambulance service at 7 instead of getting up at 10 to 7 because I work from home. So it's just a walk down the corridor. I will wake up at 6:30 because I want to do my breathing exercises. I want to just think, okay, I'm ready. Let's go. That's the only thing I do. But I think the last few years of mindfulness and meditation, as soon as I wake up, my brain's like, let's go. Let's do it.
It's time. So just a couple more questions for you, Martin. One is, tell us what's next for you. You mentioned you've got some things you're working on in the background. What's next for Martin?
So a fantastic new milestone happened this week. I found a sponsor. In fact, they approached me. So Calming Anxiety next month is being sponsored by a company. And I've waited a long time because I wanted to align with it. So I won't advertise on your show, but I'm really happy with that. I hope people who listen will appreciate the sponsorship. They'll like the product. But we're building the Calming Anxiety app. And it's not just for mindfulness. It's a radical departure from what are out there like Calm and Headspace. and we have some big plans. And if we get the backing, fingers crossed, this will be
when you get the backing, Martin.
My business partner is discussing that with someone who's backed some of their other projects. And my business partner approached me. They are a super fan. So Pat Flynn would be very proud of this. This is a great story of providing. They liked it. They helped redesign. So this is my old logo, but they've redesigned the new one because they said it needs to be more professional. I was thinking about an app. They phoned me up and said, you need an app. I go, no, but I'll build it.
And this is a super fan. I just want to emphasize, guys, this is not someone that Martin hired. This is someone who's been impacted by the work that he's doing and has jumped in to leverage his business even more.
Yeah. So I've scripted them all out. It's taken me in a new direction. This app will be a legacy. I don't want to say anything because I don't want to give away what we've put in it. I don't want other people jumping on it. But it's mind-blowingly brilliant. And don't anyone listening think, oh, he's a little bit overconfident. This is something between me and this partner of mine, and we've come up with some ideas that aren't out there. If you want to look after your mental health, this is it. I'm going to be so proud. Sweet. And also, if it's the success that we believe it will be, it means I can then go on and create something that will be so incredible. So I would like to support adolescent mental health in North Devon and then the Southwest. And this will be able to fund that charity. And normally I can sleep at night. I just lie down and I'm out. But now my mind is racing with the extent that this is taking me. And if ever you had someone who's pivoted from a small acorn, this will be a forest of oak trees. It will be phenomenal. I will pass away a very happy man if my goals are reached.
You're living out your legacy right now. I mean, talk about a topic that's near and dear to your heart, that you're in a unique position to both understand, but also remedy.
Yeah.
It's not just that you may have had similar past, but you also have the tools and the expertise to help people in this exact situation. It's got to work. And when we speak about our passions and our missions, and when the thing that's really pulling at us, the thing that keeps us up at night, as we share that, people, super fans, and connectors and networkers, they're attracted to that. And so I'm so glad that you shared it on this podcast, because someone who's listening right now might be saying, I'm passionate about the same thing. I'm passionate about the work that Martin's passionate about. How can I align with him? Which is fantastic. So I have one more question, but before I ask that question, where can people find you, Martin?
Well, the podcast Calming Anxiety is on every single platform, even Alexa. I do like that. Going into people's home going, hey, Alexa, play Calming Anxiety.
I did the same thing. We couldn't fix Google Home, but we finally did. So now I'm like, I want to go to people's houses and start my podcast.
Yeah, I know. I just, sorry. It just tickled me when we could do that. The website is martinhewlett.co.uk. Or direct to the podcast is calminganxiety.net, which is actually part of my website, but it's a direct link. And there are over 300 shows all there.
So powerful.
All for free.
Absolutely. Check out Martin's podcast. Check out the Calming Anxiety. We're going to put the link to the show notes. The topics are so relevant right now. They're incredibly helpful. No doubt that as you skim through them, think about how they'll help you, but also think about who else they can help, whether that's a cube mate that you have, whether that's a partner, maybe even an adolescent that is struggling. Someone you know needs to hear what Martin has to say right now. So this is a way for us to pay it forward, is think about who do we know that needs this message, and make sure you share it with them. So Martin, my last question, this one's a big one. If you could say any message to the world, so if the world's listening right now, what would you want to tell them?
Forgive your past and move forward, really. If you've had a difficult past and you just accept it. You know, you can't change it. Just say, look, I'm sorry for the hurt I went through or I created. Draw a line and then move forward. That's, you know, because nobody's perfect, but sadly, the negative anchors of our past hold us back from really being who we want to be. I'm a really powerful testament to that. And I would like to, through the podcast, help others, you know, and we're at 1.4 million downloads in 13 months. If I've helped even a tenth of those people, that's a lot of people who are now living a happier life. Right? That's what I'd like to do.
Oh, Martin, that's so good. I'm so glad to play a part in that as well. You have a great message, and I'm excited for more of the world to hear it.
Cheers. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Martin. All right, we're going to hop off of live now.